This is Dr. Chris's Radio Horror Show, 91.3 FM, WCW. If you're not listening to us live on Radio Horror, hopefully you're checking us out on our YouTube channel, Radio Horror, where we just hit 1,100 subscribers, so thank you for that. Tonight on the show, we have with us James Sweet, the director of the Friday the 13th fan film, Jason Rising. Thank you for coming on the show with us, James.
Thanks for having me, man.
What is Jason Rising, and how is it different than other Friday the 13th fan films, which we seem to be in a glutton of lately, mainly because of Jason's two daddies can't get along and agree to who has custody rights of him on the weekends?
That's right.
I'm not joking, people. Go look it up. It's not a joke whatsoever. Jason has two fathers, Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham, and they're in legal disputes of who owns Jason's copyright.
Yeah, it's a long-going battle. Who knows what'll happen with that, right? Well, Jason Rising started as, I guess, finally the answer to my desire to do a fan film. For a long time, it was contemplating different things, such as Star Wars fan films, but there seems to be a huge amount of those, and how many more of those do we need? And I've always been a fan of horror, fan of Friday the 13th since I was really young. And it came to a time after I did a short film called Blood and Sugar that I wrote and produced with my friend Robert Blanche, where I knew the mistakes that I made on that first attempt, and I'm like, okay, I want to do something again, but I think I'm ready to do a fan film now. And the one thing that always came to mind was Friday the 13th. So one of the actors that played the Illuminati hitman Ghost in Blood and Sugar was Dan Kyle. And every time I saw him on set, he had this large demeanor, and I was always thinking to myself, this guy would make an awesome Jason. So my friend Carl Winery, who's my DP for Jason Rising, he shot a small little Friday the 13th fan film, just a quick little short he did on his own. And he was a part of Blood and Sugar as well. And I saw it on YouTube. I'm like, holy shit, this is what I want to do. And here we are. So, making it happen.
One of the most recent Friday the 13th fan films that has really kind of blown up is Never Hike Alone. We had the director on the show, and I got a chance to Indiegogo back the second print run of the Blu-rays, so I'm looking forward to getting a copy to stick it on the shelf with all the cool bonus material. What are you guys doing for your crowdfunding? And go over some of the actors in the movie besides who you just talked about. And do you have anybody from the Friday the 13th franchise in your film like Never Hike Alone did?
As far as alumni goes, no, we don't have anybody.
You're not that cool.
Secretly sneaking in or anything like that. Which, when we first thought about it, it was an idea. It's one of those things that, like when I saw Never Hike Alone, I didn't know about the Tom Matthews thing at the end, and it was a nice surprise. It was icing on the cake. It didn't make or break Never Hike Alone, and that's the way I think it should be. It was a nice surprise, served the story just fine.
Like if you could tell us off recording that Kane Hodder or something shows up, or
no,
between us, secrets amongst friends. Corey Feldman's in it. What?
Oh, I wish.
He will do anything for a paycheck. So.
Well, honestly, one of the first incarnations we had, it had the character Tommy and Ginny, Amy Steele, and of course my love of the final chapter equals Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis. So thought about these things, and Robert and I came up with this concept of maybe finding a way to bring back Alice. And we brought her in, and it seemed like Adrienne King, we sent it off to her agent, but nothing ever came of it. So we just sort of moved on and came up with the concept we have now.
Of the 12 films, which one are you most influenced by in your fan film?
The final chapter, Friday the 13th,
Part 4.
Part 4.
Or
Yes.
as Uncle Creepy from Dread Central, or formerly of Dread Central, used to say, "Final chapter, my fat fracking."
Right. Well, and honestly, it's the original four. All four of the original ones are I'm partial to. I mean, they each have their own great character about them, and that goes for every one of these fan films that are coming out now. Each of them have their own identity. Never Hike Alone was the trailblazer for us as fan films in the wake of the Never Hike Alone fame at this point. The final chapter was something that always, when I was a kid, stuck out at me as terrifying. And so I wanted to use some of those elements, like how Ted White portrayed Jason, the look. And I'm kind of skipping back and forth on the topic, but when I came up with the idea, I just started watching. Never Hike Alone just came out, and I was like, okay, I need to research this stuff. Who's doing what are these fan films? What's good? What's not? Never Hike Alone came out, and I was like, wow, this was great. This was well done, and obviously history's made. And so I reached out to Vin and said, hey man, I loved what you did. I thought it was great. I'm doing one too. I'm sure you probably don't care, and that's fine. And just shouting out saying, hey, I dug what you did, man. And he reached back, and we started developing a relationship over time. He started liking what we were doing, and eventually it came to a point where it was like, look, man, we're on the same wavelength of this whole thing. Why don't you come on board somehow? And he became a co-writer and producer on ours. So it's been a great time, as far as getting this going and all the things that have come of it. And now having Vin on board after this Never Hike Alone thing, because he's kind of touched on almost every one of these fan films that are coming out after his. He's helped out in some capacity, and he's a dedicated fan. He's a great artist, and it's pretty awesome to work with him, and here we are.
One of the perks in your Indiegogo campaign, I noticed, I was curious if any character in your movie is named Douglas Adams.
No. But one of the things that we did.
I'm glad you got that. I'm glad you got that. Okay. Don't forget your towel.
That's right.
That was yesterday, by the way. For anybody who's paying attention, the day we're recording this is the 26th. The day it's broadcasting is the 26th. But yesterday was Douglas Adams Day.
Doug Adams.
Creator of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That's right. Blu-rays. That's seemed to be, when we did our first campaign, what everybody wanted, but we didn't.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that there's no Blu-ray on your tiers.
Right. On this one, this new campaign, we have the Blu-rays. So we're trying to get as many of them out there and reach our minimum, and because they're an expensive perk to make. It's not cheap, and so you really have to get a lot out there for it to benefit the film in a fundraising capacity. So
how do you avoid legal entanglements? This question is different for anybody and everybody for who makes a fan film.
Well, I think as long as you're not making money off of it, we're paying homage to it. We love the franchise. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're putting our own spin on it, of course, but as long as you don't step on those legal toes, really, where you're, any perk item or anything like that through a fundraising campaign, anything outside of that, it goes towards the film. It's all about just trying to make the best film possible.
You're not pocketing anything, so nobody should be able to sue you, basically, is what you're saying.
Right, and we're not using the sound score from Harry and any of the original Friday 13th scores. We're not using any sound bites or anything like that could maybe raise some eyebrows. So everything's going to be, original score. All Foley's going to be original. So, we're treading carefully, of course, because it is a fine line. But I think these fan films help the franchise. I don't think it hurts it. I think it gets people excited, and it also shows the rights holders that, hey, people are still hungry for this stuff. So, we're kind of saying, look, we want this stuff too from you guys. So this is our battle cry, in a sense, making these fan films.
Maybe one day somebody at Paramount, Warner Brothers. I heard the distribution and the rights to Jason have also been divided up due to a movie called Interstellar that came out a few years ago. It was like hey, we want all the rights to this movie, international and domestic, and we'll give you, I think it was Friday the 13th. But regardless, maybe somebody at whoever owns the film rights or whatever will look at one of these fan films and go, hey, this guy, kind of like that movie that came out a few years ago. What was the one with a ghost like flicks the light switch? Then they went on to make I probably have my directors mixed up, but one of them made a fan film and then went on to make the Annabelle movie recently. Not the third one, but the second one, and is now directing Godzilla.
Oh, are you talking about Paranormal Activity?
No. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Wait, am I? Is that guy? God, because I hate those movies. The guy who directed Annabelle Creations went on to make a huge movie after he made another movie that was based on a fan film that he made, or a short film that he made.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look it up. I'm behind on all my modern horror.
What was it about the Friday the 13th movies and not the Halloween movies or the other slasher movies that spoke to you? I know you mentioned earlier about, we could have done Star Wars, but we want to do Friday the 13th. But why Friday the 13th specifically, not one of the other slasher film genres that may not have enough fan films out there? Pumpkinhead comes to mind, or a mummy movie. I don't see enough mummy movies.
I love Pumpkinhead. I
would love to see... Oh, we got the Craft sequel kind of coming out, I think, right? Yeah, we do. And we got that god-awful Chucky movie, but at the same time, we have a Child's Play movie coming out, like another one that looks like a fan film. So, yeah. I'm trying to think of what slasher doesn't have a bevy of fan films besides Freddy.
Well, we've seen a lot of the Freddy ones we see are, Freddy versus so-and-so. We haven't really seen a Evil Dead fan film out there. That would be fun. I'm a huge Evil Dead fan.
They tried that, if you remember. Okay, by the way, the name of the director was Adam Sandberg, and he directed Lights Out, Annabelle Creations, and recently Shazam.
And
Lights Out was based off of a 5-minute little short film he did on YouTube.
Actually, Shazam looks pretty good.
Shazam was a lot of fun, and if you watched Annabelle Creations and Lights Out and then watched Shazam, you're like... I see the connection here big time. The 7 sins of evil are very kind of scary looking demons in this movie, which they should be. So you can see where the guy went from horror movies to superhero action movies.
Keeping in the same theme.
Right. And look at the guy who directed Sinister. He went on to direct Doctor Strange.
Yeah, I actually saw one of those. My daughter went and she wanted me to see one of those with her. No, when I was 12 years old and I started getting introduced to a lot of this stuff, Jason was always, my teenage Frankenstein. In short, I mean, I'd come home from school and, I'd eat my bowl of Lucky Charms or whatever it was and sit on the couch and throw in the VHS and watch the final chapter and loved it. And I mean, I got into all kinds of horror. I loved Elm Street. I got into obviously Evil Dead. I didn't watch Halloween for quite some time. I don't know what it was. I think what it really, why I avoided it was on every Halloween on TV. So it was like, I'll see it one of these days. It's coming on eventually. And finally, I eventually saw it and loved it, and Because I think the first Halloween movie I actually saw was Halloween 2, so it kind of threw me off. And then when I
talked to
finally
so
saw
many
the first
people,
one,
they never watch the original movie first. It's always one of the other ones. In the case with Friday the 13th, that is a very common thing, and people are like, "Wait, the mother's the killer? I thought it was the Jason."
well, and that goes, it's like for me, Friday 13th Part 4 was my first Friday 13th film that I watched, and then I went back and watched the rest of them accordingly. But it's kind of like Star Wars with the generations of people, kids these days. They watch, maybe like I know people that'll fight you over, what they think of The Last Jedi, how much they love that film, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm looking at, a lot of people didn't like Rogue One. They thought it was slow, but I'm like, that's as close as you're going to get to what we had.
Here's my stance on Rogue One, and the same thing goes for Solo. Everyone bitched and complained about The Force Awakens being so much like the original Star Wars movie. There were so many things the same. And the reason why is because the franchise had been soured due to the prequels and Jar Jar Binks, and they needed a way to bring the fan base back, to give them something they're familiar with. So when it came to The Last Jedi, and not Rogue One, I meant Solo. Solo and The Last Jedi, they made them so different to make them different than The Force Awakens, to give us a different take on Star Wars. That I didn't have a problem with it, but everyone wanted their cake and to eat it too.
Right.
Just unbelievable with that sometimes. It just irritates the heck out of me, and that's why they're not doing the spin-off films anymore. The Rise of Skywalker will be the last movie, but they also have TV series and coming out soon. They had The Mandalorian. That show's going to make them so much money. So We're not going to be starving for Star Wars content with a television show.
Right. I love Rogue One.
Yeah, I loved it too. Rogue One, I didn't mean Rogue One. I meant Solo and The Last Jedi are the two big ones of the problems.
Right. I enjoyed Solo. I actually enjoyed Solo as a movie as a whole. You can nitpick the crap out of it if you want, but I liked it.
I wanted to point out that your female lead in the movie, Christina Haddad, looks like Felicia Rose.
Interesting.
You don't see that?
I'll have to tell her that.
Do you see it though?
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
No, she's
got the
great.
nose. She's got the bone and that, like the way her face kind of curves down into her chin. I mean, Felicia Rose is much older than Christina, but I think Christina Haddad looks like a young Felicia Rose.
She'll get a kick out of that. She was actually one of my acting coaches, and I don't know if you ever watched Legend of Zohan, but she did one of the voiceovers. She was like the mom, I think.
Unfortunately, yes, I have seen that movie.
But no, she does good work, and she's a lot of fun. She's one of my acting coaches, and she's great.
And she's the voice of Pamela Voorhees?
She's also doing the voice of Pam, yes.
Is your fan film appropriate for all ages? Like Never Hikes Alone was pretty appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I always take the Will Smith side of things. Is if I can't have my kid watch it, if I'm ashamed of my kid watching it, then I probably shouldn't be doing it. And it's one of those things for me. If you look at the Paramount, the formula that they've been trying to rehash is this: you got to see boobs every 10 minutes, and that's a mathematical formula for a way of saying, hey, this is why this film was successful. In my opinion, that's BS. Maybe for the 80s time, it worked, but for now, it's not a necessity. You can touch on certain things and have fun with it, but for us, it's not about that. It's about making a good movie, not just a good Friday the 13th fan film, but we want to make a good film.
That was the one thing I've noticed in a lot of these fan films is they've cut down tremendously on the alcohol, drug, and sex in their fan films, and I'm wondering if that's just because of because of like what you said.
Well, not only that, but look at, we have to tone down even our trailers, because when you try to boost posts on through Facebook or any type of networking, they'll ban it. So you can't even use a lot of those types of things anyway to really promote your film. So you're at the mercy of even slight things like a small cuss word. Even if we try to bleep it out, sometimes they don't allow it because they're saying, well, you're insinuating that. But so it's tough. You know, they put the kibosh on a lot of stuff, especially through Facebook.
It is also a little different because it's about an escaped fugitive, and that's nothing that's happened through the camp before. I mean, Jason's gone to space and hell, and the FBI's blown him up, but it's never been about like criminals getting involved, other than those bikers in part 3. But they weren't like on the run from the law as far as we were aware. So we didn't have that. Like, what was the? There's a horror movie called Malevolence, came out in 2003. You ever seen it?
I don't think I have.
It's about a bank robbery that goes wrong. They get away with the money, but one of their members gets shot. And when they meet back up at the hideaway to wait out the cops, it happens to be the home of a serial killer that's been living in the area in secret for years.
That sounds like Voorhees.
Like a slasher, you could say. Like a slasher. It's not like at a camp or anything. It just happens to be right next to I would say it's more in tune with like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because the backstory of the serial killer involves the slaughterhouse. The serial killer has like a bag on his head. He doesn't really have that much of a mask, but he's always in the distance. You really can't see him. But it's definitely one of those movies where like two people be having a conversation, but right outside the window, Michael Myers is staring at him. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we, the audience, are always seeing the killer, but the people, you know, who are talking to each other are not.
So it has that slasher vibe.
Right. It's a really good movie. I definitely recommend checking it out. And that's the only slasher movie I can think of that involves like some type of like criminal activity besides like I Know What You Did Last Summer. But again, nobody knows that they're criminals. So
yeah, that sounds a lot like the way kind of the Voorhees premise for that fan film.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to that, where it's they robbed a bank and they have to hide out for a night, and they end up at Camp Crystal Lake to wait it out, and guess who's there?
Jason.
That's right. But ours, you know, sometimes films are good when, like, Predator, for instance.
The first one.
Okay. You know, we enjoyed the ride without the alien, because most of that film was made anyways. Obviously, they had the Van Damme flop idea that didn't work out with the purple ant alien thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had to change it all around. But
right, yeah, I've seen the behind the scenes of it. I was like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Who thought that was a good idea? I would like to meet that guy. I want him on the show. Is he still alive?
Well, what was nice was they had an opportunity to edit most of that film and look at it and correct the issue. In doing that, they made a good film without the alien stuff.
Right, definitely. It's definitely a very, you know, run-of-the-mill kind of standard rescue the diplomats from the jungle kind of story, which is really what it is until the Predator starts picking them off one by one.
Yeah, and that's sort of how I wanted this to have that feeling of sending them out. I mean, we're still doing a Friday the 13th horror film, but I also wanted to have a different reason be in that vicinity, not just we're going camping or we're going after Jason kind of deal.
Right. Real quick, Red Crow Films, that's your film company? Is that got some Native American symbolism to it?
No, not really. It's just I'm a fan of The Crow.
Okay.
And basically, I always thought that scene where he lights the lighter fluid on fire in the form of the crow,
right,
was always partial to me, and so I'm like, that's cool. That works out.
I was talking with somebody just before we started recording about the X-Files, and in season 3, there's a Native American actor that helps Mulder and Scully out. His real name was Red Crow.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's cool.
I thought there was a connection there, but yeah, I'm a big fan of the Crow as well. The Crow is coming back in comics again next month with Hack Slash versus the Crow. Are you familiar with the comic book miniseries one-shots ongoings Hack Slash?
No, I'm not. I do have a lot of the older comic books from the Crow. I have my first original series, I got signed from J.O. Barr.
Look up Hack Slash. I think you would really enjoy it, considering what you're making for a film. It's about a goth girl named Cassie Hack and her giant monster friend Vlad as they run around the country hunting down slashers.
Awesome.
And next month they will be running into The Crow. I don't know what incarnation of The Crow, but it's the miniseries is called Hack Slash versus The Crow.
Who's doing it?
And coming up late June, early July, we'll be doing a giant Child's Play episode, not just because of the remake movie coming out, but the last one-shot before it became an ongoing series was Hack Slash versus Chucky.
Oh, cool.
One of the few copywritten characters that they actually kind of encountered, but Tim Seeley for Comic-Con one year did a one-sheet piece of artwork, comic strips, Hack Slash versus Dexter versus Jason. And it's drawn by Tim. People have constantly asked him, can you make that in a comic book? And he's like, no, I could do that. That was it. But
nice.
In it, Jason is fighting Dexter. And then Dexter gets like backhanded by Jason, and then Cassie and Vlad think they're after Dexter, but they're actually after Jason. And then Cassie, Vlad, and Dexter team up at the last panel to go running after Jason.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and Vlad basically has a very look like Jason. He wears like a gas mask, kind of a hockey mask. He's a giant monster guy, got gray skin. He was abandoned as a baby, very mistreated, but he's always been a good man. Just kind of has monstrous looking features. So it'd be interesting to see him and Jason fight each other. But I'd also love to see Dexter fight Jason.
Well, and I always thought, Predator and Jason would be a great combo.
Maybe, but I think that's stretching it back into that Jason going into space territory. I think we need to keep Jason far away from hell and space.
Well, yeah, those were fun, and you can't obviously take those things too seriously, but no, and that's one of the things about Jason Rising is we wanted to make it a horror film and try to make it scary and get back to that.
I've interviewed John LeMay, and he was a lot of fun to talk about, the ridiculousnesses of Jason Goes to Hell. Here's
the thing: is that you look at the Evil Dead 2. Look how crazy that thing was that Sam Raimi did.
Right.
I mean, his whole concept was a Three Stooges horror film.
Right.
It was still terrifying, even though the over the top Stooges stuff is in it. It was still a great horror film.
Definitely.
And I think, Jason Goes to Hell, or Jason X, or some of the least of the favorites, even going to New York. For some people, they love that. For some, that's some of their favorites. But
it's great when he gets to New York. I wouldn't say the movie leading up to it is that great. I don't know what it is, when they get the green light to do some of these things, what's on their mind or what their thoughts are, what the studio's telling them. Money.
Yeah, it's
greed.
Just,
that's what's on their minds. It's nothing but greed.
And that's, one thing that I love about being able to do a fan film. It's saying, hey, this is what I love about it, and we're going to show you that this still can be good. This still can be cool. So far, people are responding well to it. So,
well, where can people go to find out more information about Jason Rising? And do you have your own YouTube channel so they can at least watch the trailer?
Yeah, you can go to, if you just look up Jason Rising, Friday 13th fan film. There's a YouTube channel for that. You can go to jasonrising13.com. That's our webpage. Obviously, you can look us up on Facebook. That's usually our main source of networking and getting information out. But trailers up on YouTube. You can go to Indiegogo, look up Jason Rising. We're still running our second campaign. We have, I think, about 18 or 19 days left on it. Lots of goods. Get your perks. We're going to make this happen, and we're going to try to get it out towards the end of the year and make it the best possible fan film that we can create as a group, because there's a lot of awesome people involved in this thing, and they all have their hearts and souls into it.
I wish you the absolute best of luck on this fan film. From the trailer, it looks really cool. Again, I like the unique idea of it being like a prison escape thing, and they just don't happen to be running after Jason or anything like that. So it definitely gives it a unique thing. I wish you the best of luck with whatever you got coming up. We'll keep an eye on the fan film and do what we can to help support it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, and appreciate all the support.